Good afternoon, good evening, depends on what part of the country you are. This is John Pyron. Welcome to the Business Doctor Show. I was having a conversation with none other than Michael Colello this past week, and excellent tax dude, by the way. So if you don't know what to do with taxes, you don't have your tax strategy and plan, it is not too late. Got 3 weeks left to get some I's dotted, some T's crossed, some checks written, some postage stamps put on envelopes. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on all those deductions. So, but he was telling me about a problem, and I said call the guy back and tell him that you reached out to your personal business doctor. I'm like, oh my God, that is a great script. So when you come to this show, understand you're coming to the Business Doctor Show. Okay. And I think I'm up to 1,000, approaching 1,090 business owners separate business owners that have given a strategy session to. And after doing the math over 27 years, a little over close to 15,000 actual sessions. So when it's like going to the doctor. When you go to the doctor, you get the appointment set up. You get there, they take your pre-notes, your triage, and check your vitals. And then the doctor only hangs out with you for maybe 10, 15 minutes. Okay. He's not in there for a long time. And the reason all he's got to do is come in and check this, check this, check this. I know exactly what it is. Here's the solution. Here's your prescription. Have a great day. Wish you the very best. Good luck. And then if you go and you take action on that, guess what? It actually works. And so what I have found is it's the same thing. I've gotten to the point now where I've surrounded myself with a bunch of ecosystem partners, because invariably people come to me and they go, hey, I've got this problem and it's affecting me this way. And after looking at them and diagnosing it, I'm like, yeah, I kind of know how to do this, but I'm just not going to do the surgery myself. So I'm going to refer you to a specialist. And in my world, in our world here on the Business Doctor Show, they're called ecosystem partners. And one of our ecosystem partners that we have on the call today, who also happens to be a client of mine, and you can feel free to tell him I'm completely full of BS or that I'm actually right on. When Jenny can call me up with any problem because she's an active one-on-one client of mine, and within a very short period of time, I just give her the answer. Okay, but invariably, if I have gotten smart enough over the years that if I have an HR question, an HR problem, I'm going to my go-to surgical specialist, Blue Dream HR, in the area of HR. Because if you're a business owner and you have an employee, or maybe you have 100 employees, you're going to need to talk to somebody like Jenny Nguyen-Jennings, whether you like it or not. I'm just going to be candid and honest. It's like, especially if you're in the country, the state of California. Okay, because there's a lot of stuff that's just completely different there. And so let me kind of give a short, I'm going to read off a quick short intro to Miss Jenny Nguyen-Jennings. So Jenny Nguyen-Jennings, the owner and principal consultant at Blue Dream HR. Jenny and her team are the strategic partners businesses rely on to navigate the complex world of HR compliance. Operating in California, a notoriously litigious state, Jenny specializes in areas that create the biggest liability for companies, particularly intricate wage and hour compliance. Oh my gosh, Jenny, we can go on and on about that. Okay. She has a proven track record of successfully defending companies and claims and protecting them from costly lawsuits. More importantly, Blue Dream HR proactively builds the protocols, policies, and robust structure needed to prevent those liabilities from ever arising. Jenny is now applying this deep foundation in corporate structure and accountability to her work as a family business advisor. She helps family-owned enterprises thrive by addressing the unique challenges of family dynamics, improving communication, defining clear core values, and establishing transparent accountability for all family members involved, ensuring a healthy professional structure for their lasting legacy. Welcome, Jenny Nguyen-Jennings. So,
Hi, everyone.
do
Good
me a
afternoon.
do do me a favor, take a moment to fill in the gaps of what I left out and share with us something about you personally.
Well, I've been consulting for 20 years. So, unfortunately, I've seen it all and I've seen businesses thrive. I've seen businesses fall apart. And, the disheartening thing is in California, the country of California, a lot of these issues have occurred just out of lack of knowledge. A lot of these issues have come about with no ill intent. Because California compliance is constantly changing and business owners can't keep up and they shouldn't have to. But we're in a world where everyone is so litigious that one minor misstep could
Hmm.
create tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars of liability for a company. So what
Yeah.
we do is we're the reliable resource for small to medium-sized business owners to be able to help them navigate through the treacherous waters of wage and hour compliance, employment law compliance. So that's just a small component of what we do, but that's where we really show value in helping business owners protect their legacy.
Yeah. So what has been well, before we get into the weeds, give us an insight as as a business owner. At some point you went from employee to business owner, or have you always been a business owner?
No, I recently started my business 4 years ago. Now I'll tell you the history behind it. So as I mentioned, I've been consulting for about 20 years.
Hmm.
But working for other large firms, whether it be large big box PEO corporations or other consulting companies, I was always tasked with having at least 200 to 300 clients under my belt. And that didn't allow me the bandwidth to really get to know each and every one of my clients. So for the most part, clients would call me in a very reactive manner. Their hair was on fire. They would only call me when there was a harassment issue, when there was a lawsuit, when something was already happening. And that's not the world that small business owners, any business owners live in. And it was a level of customer service that I could not say I was proud of. So 4 years ago, I started Blue Dream HR, and our goal was to be able to create relationships. So that's where the blue comes in. If you guys haven't heard of the True Colors personality test, look it up. So blue means you're very focused on relationships, empathy, um, core values, understanding, compassion. So my dream was to put the blue back in HR. So in order to do that, we were only able to commit to a small amount of clients per consultant. So each consultant only has 20 to 25 clients versus 200 clients. So that gives
Hmm.
us the ability of really getting to know our clients, their core values, their industry, their entire leadership team.
Hmm.
So when the owner calls in about employee Billy Bob, I know exactly who Billy Bob is. I know
Hmm.
his performance history. I know any leave of absences. I may even know his personal history because those are that's the background info that I need in order to be able to create uh, valuable discussions and customized advice rather than a cookie cutter call center. And that's what really differentiates us from any other big box HR consulting company.
Yeah. And I've had the privilege of watching you on the front line, and yeah, it's I just kind of as a side note is Jenny and I are working with a client at the same time, and I have to actually come in and be the bad cop. I actually have to terminate somebody who I've never met, by the way, and so what was really comforting is going, hey, you checked all the boxes. We're good to go. Like I can pull the trigger. And she's like, absolutely. Boom, boom, boom. Check, 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 check. And and sure enough, the person wanted to have go back and challenge it and try to file a suit and all this other stuff. But because you did all the hard work, because I've hired a lot of employees and unfortunately terminated a lot of employees over the years. And California is you better dot your I and cross your T there because they're going to come back on you, and depends on how that goes down. And so in this case, this person did come back, and there was nothing there. You did a
Yeah.
phenomenal job, and it's like the HR manual for California is starting to resemble the IRS tax code. It's gotten
Right.
that complicated. And
Right.
so and so
Um,
I was really impressed that there's so much to it with HR. What is the number one? I noticed one of the notes here is protecting companies from liabilities, wage and hour compliance. So give us some insight on what that means and how we as business owners should be prepared for that, um, or tell us what we need to be on the lookout for. Because I guarantee you, most people going to listen to this recording, they're missing something.
right.
I have yet to run across a company that has their act completely together.
I agree. And you know what? We live in California. And to be candid, I don't expect each and every one of my clients to be 120% compliant with all of the wage and hour laws and employment laws that we come up with twice a year. The uh, the the biggest factor is risk mitigation. I'm not going to force compliance down all of my clients' throats because it's just not realistic to be 100% compliant all the time. It's a matter of, well, how much are you willing to risk? What's the consequences? What are the chances of getting caught? And what are the liabilities? So the consulting relationship is much different from having an in-house HR manager who doesn't understand the perspective of a small business owner. It's
Mhm,
just not realistic. So,
mhm,
in a consultative role, we really have to take a look at, well, what are our risks and how do we approach it? Is it worth approaching? Is it worth fixing? And
mhm,
that's when it's really up to the business owner to decide what do we do moving forward. I'll give you all your options, all the consequences. I'll even tell you what the loopholes are, but it's really up
mhm,
to the business owner to decide, and I'll be there to support them the entire way. So in California, it really depends on the industry. One of the biggest issues I always see are minor things like meal and rest breaks isn't quite minor because it'll create tens of thousands of dollars for one employee. Take that
mhm.
times 50 employees times 3 years. That could put a business out of operations.
Sure.
So, anything meal and rest break period related, if you have a primarily non-exempt hourly workforce, that's your biggest risk. So, what I would recommend is making sure that you do a full audit of all of your pay practices, your employment practices, payroll practices, timekeeping from A to Z, just to know where you're at and where all your skeletons are. We may decide
Mhm,
not to fix any and all of them, but at least you know where you stand and we can
mhm,
create goals and strategic objectives from there.
mhm,
So anything wage and hour non-exempt related, I would say would be the biggest issue.
mhm. And so, how often should I'm gonna ask you the question. I'm gonna see if we're in line with what I usually tell business owners. How often should a business owner, regardless of what their size is, bring someone like you in to do what I would call and what you would call a gap analysis, right? So walk us through what your gap analysis includes and why it's important to do a gap analysis, in my opinion, twice a year in California, once in June and once in December.
Well, the initial gap analysis will be very, very thorough. Um, I have heard clients call it a proctology exam because it can be very, very thorough. It goes from reviewing their recruitment practices, onboarding, to performance management, to employee relations, to timekeeping, pay practices, all the way to termination. So hire to retire is what I like to call it. So that can be done once, and then you know where you're at. But the maintenance part of it, I agree, should be done at least twice a year, if not once a year, because things constantly change. People are getting promotions. You're giving pay raises. How do you know that that pay raise you gave is compliant and you're calculating things correctly? So it's
Yeah.
important to be able to go through that analysis at least once or twice a year.
And California is notorious because most of their labor laws change January 1st and then also July 1st. And
Yes.
so this is something I've learned the hard way. I started my first business in California when I was 20 years old. That's over 35 years ago. I didn't have a business where I had any employees until 1998, and I had that grew that to 23 employees. Um, California has all these different, Jupiter lines up with Saturn this month, and then Saturn, surpasses Neptune, and then Neptune goes over here to Mercury, and it's like depends on how those stars line up. Things change at 2 employees, 5 employees, 25 employees, 50 employees. If you stand on one head with your hand up and you're chewing gum at the same time, it's a different rule. And it's just so much different things. And I want to connect the known to the unknown because Michael Colello is a client of mine. He's here as well. And one of the things that we have integrated in his company is a thing called a 3-year look back. Why? Because unless you are an HR, unless you're a tax professional, you're not going to know if your dude did your taxes, 3 years ago the right way. It's the same thing here. You might have the greatest HR person on the planet, but if you don't have what I'm going to call a second opinion service, okay, which is Blue Dream HR comes in and gives you a second opinion. All you're doing as a business owner is you're playing Russian roulette every single day you come into business because you're not an HR professional. None of us as business owner, I don't have the time to go and look up all this junk. Okay. But I can partner with somebody who can come in and tell me where my risks are, where my vulnerabilities are. And you're right, it's risk management because some of that stuff I'm like, screw them, I ain't doing that. I'll take the chance.
Mhm.
I'll BK this thing tomorrow. Start up a new one. Don't quote me on that. uh, but the thing is how important is company culture? So once you got everything dialed in and everything's all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in the past, Blue Dream HR kind of shifts into more of company culture, right?
Yes, I love that you bring that up because uh, the first phase of client onboarding for us with Blue Dream HR is we make sure that they have their HR foundation set. We make sure all their practices are compliant. They've got their handbook, their job descriptions, performance review forms. We do a salary study. We make sure that we're competitive in the market. And that's just the foundation. That's all the tactical things. But once we graduate to phase two, that's where we can really do the fun strategic work and make sure that what we're doing in HR is aligned with their business goals. So if we've got a business that plans on scaling, well, what kind of talent do they need? What kind of retention strategies? What kind of training do we need to do in order to expand into, I don't know, other areas of the United States or another line of business? How do we align ourselves with the company's mission and their core values?
Mhm.
So that's where we really focus in on implementing. If a client doesn't already have core values, we can help set that up. But the strategic component is how do we implement those core values into the employees' day-to-day lives and how they perform their job, and how do we hold them accountable? How do we keep employees in positions where they feel fulfilled and where they can succeed? And that's really the strategic component of it.
And so you and I have had a privilege of working together, going on about 6, 7 months, something like that. We've known each other for over a year. And and so when you look back over this last year, I can name off the top of my head a couple of calls that I've gotten from clients of mine that, you're working with and I'm working with at the same time. And it's like, what? They did what? What has been the most interesting, most scariest to a business owner problem that you've dealt with this year? Like you didn't really see it coming, neither did the business owner, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's an interesting problem. You know, Give us a little
Well,
insight, you know?
I think you would know exactly who I'm talking about when I tell you this story. So part of what we do at Blue Dream HR is not only the compliance aspect, but I am able to help my clients with wage and hour claims, EOC claims. So we will go to hearings and we will go to settlement conferences as well. So one of the biggest nightmares that you and I have had to deal with this year jointly, John, is an employee nightmare who has thrown everything at us at the book. She had a retaliation claim, which we won, a wage and hour claim, which we won, a harassment claim, which we also won, a workers' comp claim, which we also won, a leave of absence claim, which we also won, a reasonable accommodation, which we also were able to navigate. So anything she could possibly throw at us, we were able to successfully prevail because we had the documentation. We were able to prove that, yes, there were performance issues and here's all the documentation to prove it. And there was no basis in any of her claims, but it had to take a lot of diligent, detailed documentation.
Yeah.
And, you and I made it look so easy, but there was a lot of
A
work
lot of back
behind the
end
scenes
stuff,
that had to be done.
a lot of back end stuff,
There's a lot of
and
negotiations, investigations, having to go through all the paperwork.
yeah, I distinctly remember there's 5 people from DIR that just walked into my office here demanding to, cease and desist. Don't destroy any documents. I mean, it was like,
Right.
what? I'm
Right,
like,
but
get the hell out of here, man.
and the sad part is business owners think, okay, well, I only have 5 employees. I don't need HR or
Yeah,
I don't need a consultant, but it only takes one person. That
that's
one
it.
person,
And this one person was
right.
like, the only thing I can imagine is this one person sitting there, and especially with AI that we have now. Now, this is where all you business owners really need to pay attention, man, is with the advent of AI, the only thing I could think of, because she came at us with every single angles I didn't even know
Right.
existed. I was like,
Hmm.
where the hell did that come from? The only thing I think of, she's in there going, okay, let's see here. How do I screw them over now? Um, here's their website, and she came up with some of this stuff. I'm like, where the hell that, is that even a process?
Right. And people are educated these days. Like I
Yeah.
mentioned, we're very litigious. You can drive down Highway 5 and see billboards
Mhm.
for employment lawyers at every juncture.
Yeah.
And they're educated. And when I did the math, the value of the claims, which by the way we all won and prevailed, would
Yeah.
have been over $350,000
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
easily.
it's like just you know, now that's just all that stuff. But as a business owner, and hear me on this when I tell you this, guys and gals, is the amount of time that it took on Jenny's side, my side, our client side, the phone calls, the amount of energy it took for an internal staff. Because here's the thing that most business owners don't realize, especially in California. Guess what, my brother and sister? The burden of proof is on you,
Mhm.
okay? Not the employee. The employee can claim, I was standing there at the water fountain. I had one leg in the air. I was chewing gum, and I heard him make a sexist comment on December 3rd, 2023 at 12:36 in the afternoon. I remember it just, I have trauma over that. Okay.
Yeah.
And all they got to do is make the claim. But at the end of the day, it's up to you to prove that it didn't happen. Okay. And so, in a world where we have worked our tails off as business owners to build companies, okay, to get our companies to a place where they're thriving, they're making money, we're supporting lots of families, we're making impact with people's lives. This one thing can screw the whole thing up. And Jay knows exactly. Jay's sitting here going, "Yeah," because he owns a PEO brokerage and he deals with this all over the country. Okay, is you need a second opinion. Okay, so if you're listening to this recording, if you're listening to this on the while driving on a podcast channel or watching this video on a YouTube, what is the best and easiest way for people to connect with you to find out more about your services?
Well, you can start by visiting www.bluedreamhr.com. There is a place for you to put in an inquiry and reach out to us through the website, or you can reach us at service@bluedreamhr.com, or just contact me directly. It's Jenny@bluedreamhr.com.
So one of the things that I want to highlight is I had to do this type of work last year twice for a company. I had to come in and be a family therapist. Um, Actually, 2 years ago, last year twice. Companies, big companies, and there's a lot of these companies right now that are family owned. They've been around 35, 40 years, and now they're starting to transition out. A lot of baby boomer owned business owners wanting to transition out, and they're getting involved with the children. And I got to tell you, kudos, high five, by the way, watching you go from HR Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, okay, to this family relations counselor person, getting owners and kids to work together has just it's been a blast watching that, by the way. And you now you've got a new feather in your cap. Like, this is something you're passionate about. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new service that you're offering? Because there's a lot of family businesses out there that would hire a family business advisor.
Yeah, absolutely. So we all deal with humans. People have their own emotions, there's conflict. So with that, makes it even harder for a business to run when you're related. So in my HR world, I'm constantly dealing with people, their emotions, their managing expectations, setting standards. So when I come across family-owned businesses, the dynamic is so much different because you know what? You're stuck. You're stuck with your sibling and your father and being the eighth generation handing down the business. And there will always be conflict, and that's okay. That's healthy as long as you know how to navigate that in a productive manner without breaking your relationships in the business. So it's a matter of navigating open communication and accountability. So, what we've been doing recently is a lot of executive coaching and leadership development. And it really boils down to the blue, the relationships, the empathy, the compassion, and understanding each other. And I know that's really Pollyanna for me to say, but that's really what we're dealing with, people's emotions. And it's a lot harder than it sounds, but it's even more difficult when you can't get out of that business because you're stuck. It's a family business. You don't really have a choice. You either make it work or it's going to fall apart. So if you want to be able to pass down that legacy to the next generation, you better get your you know what together.
Um, Let me see here. Let me kind of open it up. Raise your hand if you got a question. specifically for Jenny Nguyen-Jennings here, Blue Dream HR. And I'll go ahead and I'll either myself or Gene will unmute you. Anybody? You can raise your hand. Oh, Jay, there you go. All right, Jay, go ahead.
There we go. Hey Jenny, this has just been fantastic and listening to you because I live in your world just completely differently, right? Um, I work with the top, 30, 40 largest PEOs and, placement where we're placing thousands upon thousands of employees and they become numbers and, you know, the lack of relationship actually does have some ramifications, right? And so listening to you is a breath of fresh air because depending on the type of business and unfortunately I actually had to come off right when we started because somebody called me and they're a 550 employee business and we're doing some things and I'm just like I better take this call.
Mhm.
And so I guess my question is because I do have a lot of people in California. Yeah, I'm in East Tennessee now. But like John, I'm a transfer. I'm a guy that 95% of my people are in Northern California. I moved from Folsom, if you know where Folsom is at. And so your vertical, your category, do you sort of have an avatar of, yeah, we seem to work really well with those people with 5 to 49 employees or 50 to 100 or we seem to work really well in tech or you name it, lumber, I don't care. Or what seems to really apply? And then I'm hearing the family business part, which I have somebody that's dealing with that right now.
Well, the nice thing about consulting is I get to do it all, and I get to learn about the transportation industry, the restaurant industry, wineries, manufacturing, electricians, you name it, I've done it. Where I find the most joy is working with clients who truly care about their company culture and their employees. And sorry for the distraction. Um, Uh, Lost my train of thought, but yeah, we would service any and all industries. It really boils down to the type of relationships we can have with our clients and how invested they are in their employees and in their culture.
Yeah. So is there any businesses that, how should I say this, are too far gone?
Too far gone to find that for me.
Eh, Yeah. Have been down the path of, I don't want to say destruction, um, but might need it, it I mean maybe you are the person. That's why I'm wondering is if is there anybody that comes on and they're so far down their path that you go, yeah, we're not a right fit. um because I've definitely run into some. It's like, especially when you're talking about family businesses and they're set in their ways. They've been around for 35 years and, you know, somebody's, being handed over the keys. Things are changing. I'm just throwing some questions out there for you.
Well, what I can say is that there are certain industries that are more difficult, primarily because of the demographic that they hire. And I will say, service-oriented industries such as the restaurants, hotels, wineries, they tend to be a little bit more heavy in employee relations issues, primarily
Okay.
because of improper hiring, not hiring the right people. Because if you think about it, the turnover is so high. So they
Oh,
constantly
absolutely.
have to react and backfill positions. So they're backed into a corner where they have to find the next person right away. So that means that they don't have enough time to really invest in finding the right people and really slowing down. So my recommendation is always having that constant churn of people. So,
Interesting. Well, thank you
yes.
so much. You've been wonderful. I'll hand it over for somebody else that has different types of questions because I know I could, you know, take up 3 hours of your time, and maybe I'll do that on a on a
Well,
different
you can
call.
find my number.
I actually, yeah, I have it all. You did a great job putting that, into the chat. So thank you.
Anyone else? I
Interesting.
know someone had their
All
hand
right.
up.
So yeah, no, there's people joining that are. I'm gonna have to change the they're gonna have to register going forward, Gene, before they come in here. We've had some Zoom bombs go on in here, some offensive stuff. Okay. So just screen them better before you allow them to enter. Okay. And then we'll go from there. So who else has got another question?
I think Adela.
Uh yeah, but I asked multiple times for that person to turn on their video and they did
Oh,
not.
okay.
So don't know who they are, so I kick them out.
Gotcha.
Okay. So people in there, they got nothing better to do. So anyways. So with what's new coming up in California this coming year? HR wise. Anything changing, anything new?
Well, there's constantly changes, John. I didn't get to mention earlier. So the changes that come twice a year, right? It happens in California, but usually in July. Here's one thing to keep in mind. It's not just California change. They're
Yeah.
local ordinance changes. So if you're in
Yeah.
a populated metropolitan city like San Francisco, anywhere in the Bay Area, LA, they have their own city ordinances that you have to keep an eye on. Sometimes they don't always match California. And
Yeah.
sometimes they counteract. So that's one thing you keep in mind. There aren't very many significant changes this year. One of the biggest things that comes to mind that we're going to need to change very soon is I used to put together reimbursement agreements where, if an employee comes on board and we pay for the recruitment, their relocation expenses or any sort of tuition reimbursement, we can
Mhm.
no longer make them pay it back if
Mhm.
they leave the company after a certain amount of years. I used to be able to put together so many of those contracts, but I can no longer do that. So that's effective January 1st. There's
Yeah.
the minimum wage changes that's pretty general. But I'll be sending out a newsletter. So if anyone's interested in receiving a copy, please email us or sign up on our company website, and I'll make sure to send you our white paper for the 2026 legal changes.
Absolutely. One of the things I heard, correct me if I'm wrong on this, is this, I don't know if it's still the case today, but if you are an employer and your employees, because invariably if you have employees, this is what's going to happen. They're going to come to you and say, "Can I get a payroll advance?" Okay. And you're like, "Oh, no problem." So you instruct whoever's cutting the checks, go ahead and cut them a payroll advance, and you think all is good. Okay. And all of a sudden you go to pull that payroll advance from their check, everything's good, but then all of a sudden you have things go south with that employee and they quit, terminate, whatever. And they come back and go, by the way, I'm married and you never got permission to pull money from my check because I'm married. Okay. I
Mhm.
didn't even know that existed, by the way.
Yes. There's a
But
lot of issues around pay advances that I absolutely hate.
yeah, yeah, it's like people don't know if someone's married, you are not allowed to deduct anything out of their check without both of them and their wife's or spouse's permission. You know?
Right. And you know that's just a small component too. Not only
Yeah.
does the pay deduction have to be in writing, but when they leave the company and if they still owe you, let's say 2 grand, and even if their final paycheck covered for that 2 grand, as an example, you can't take a balloon payment. And again, the disheartening part is a lot of the times business owners do things for the benefit of their employee. They think they're benefiting the employee and helping the employee and encouraging them by giving them paid
Hmm.
meal breaks, giving them
Yeah.
a free meal if they're a restaurant, doing all these things to help an employee, and yet it ends up biting them in the butt and
Yeah.
causing huge liabilities. And that's just so sad because a lot of these issues have come out of nothing but good intent.
Yeah. Chris, go ahead. Let me unmute you. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, speaking of good intentions, the last company I worked for offered a benefit to employees by giving them um, access to, for example, tickets to baseball games and at a very discounted rate. So it was free or half price or something like that. But what happened was that that was considered a taxable benefit. And so they ended up having to deduct from from the employees' paychecks, the taxes for that taxable benefit. And the employees were coming to me as the COO and saying, how come money was deducted from my paycheck? And I had to dig into it and find out, yeah, you got football tickets or baseball tickets, and that was taxable. And so we had to deduct taxes from your paycheck. And they were all upset about it. They didn't know that was going to happen.
Right. There's a lot of other issues around that too. And here's the thing that no one knows about that. So I have this client, he's a restaurant. Every shift, they get 2 free beers. The free beers are of value, let's just say $20. So that $20 should have been taken into account into what's called the regular rate of pay. Google it, California. So if someone were to make $20 an hour, overtime, you would think it's just time and a half, $30 an hour. That's not true. That $20 worth of beer should have been taken into account when you calculated overtime. So the overtime rate would have been closer to like maybe $22 an hour times time and a half. So every single benefit that you add to an employee's compensation bucket now has to be calculated when you do regular rate of pay. So it's these minor little things that you think are beneficial to the employee only, not your own, it ends up hurting you. And that's what a lot of business owners don't know. And it really sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, one of the things that, and I'm going to go into a lightning round here, and feel free to anybody ask questions. Is I'm going to walk through some scenarios that I've ran across over the years of consulting business owners. This is just what happens in the real world of business. It's
Hmm.
like, hey man, I got my rock star salesperson. You know, he's doing a great job. She's doing a great job, and I'm paying them a flat fee of $3,500, $4,000 a month plus commission, and I'm like, well, their salary, right? Okay. And so they call me on a Saturday night and they go, hey, I'm working on this proposal. It's due on Monday. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm sitting there, man, we're gonna crush this deal on and on and on. And then next thing you know, he calls me on Sunday and go, man, I got the I's dotted and T's crossed put on this. And then we go and Monday comes around and we meet at client's office at 6 a.m. And then we're going throughout our day running sales calls. And next thing you know, we're also strategizing at 9 p.m. at night, on this other thing. And everything's going great for 2 years. We're kicking some serious butt, taking some names. Then all of a sudden my sales rep starts to coast, resting on his laurels, sales drop. I start, hey man, what's going on, dude? Well, it's just like I'm out playing golf and on and on and on. Like, and all of a sudden, I now want to put him back in check and he's not going to be happy about that. Next thing you know, we part ways, and I'm thinking, here's your final check, dude. But yet, unless he's paid a certain amount, unless he's classified as a certain amount, last time I checked, I can pay him a salary all day long I want in California. He is not a salary exempt employee.
Salary exempt is a whole nother ball of wax. And if you want to spend 2 hours with me on my soapbox, I'm more than happy to do that. But it boils down to, regardless of whether they're inside sales or outside sales, it really depends on their job duties. Because there are some, for example, there are some plumbers or like towers or whatever position they are, they earn a commission, and I've seen them misclassified as salary exempt, but if they're performing non-exempt work for the majority of time, meaning more than 51%, they may not even be qualified to be salary exempt. So let's start there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when you terminate someone, well, let's look at their commission contract. Did you put anything in their contract to say that commission ends after immediately upon termination or 90 days upon termination or 6 months? What does that contract say? And technically, California, we're talking about California here because it's the strictest state in the United States. Final pay requirements does not include commission. So you could technically wait until whenever commission is regularly calculated. So whenever clients call me and ask me a question, I'm always going to say, well, it depends. And then I'll ask them more and more questions because it really does depend on the scenario, all the details, what's involved. So I can't give you a black and white answer. It's always, in my world, it's always gray. I probably should have named my company Gray Dream HR.
So the only reason I bring it up is I was taken over as a fractional CEO of a company about 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I was brought in to basically clean house, restructure things, do that sort of thing. And the way he was treating his salesperson, thought everything no problem. Next thing you know, $190,000 lawsuit, you know.
Oh,
And one of the components which I found very interesting is because they were able to prove that he was a salary but non-exempt,
oh,
is
those are the worst.
he had to go back and, oh, by the way, those 2 10-minute breaks that you paid for, okay,
Mhm,
had
mhm.
to be recalculated once the commissions were calculated because they were had to be paid at the right rate.
Right.
This now we're able to, knock down a bunch of that, but that employer had to write with penalties and all this stuff. I think it was like a $71,000 check.
Mhm.
And it was insane. I'm like, I didn't even, so you're telling me that I can't just do $4,000 a month. It's $4,000 a month, but by the time you add all the commissions and reverse engineer it down to 2,080 hours, it's not $4,000 a month, it's $12,000 a month. And each one of those 2 10-minute breaks times five, times 4.3, times 12, I owe him the difference. I'm like, oh God. And
Right.
so,
Take that plus a 3 year statute of limitations. So you're going back three
yeah.
years for each
Oh,
employee.
yeah. Yeah. And so the other thing I found out, and this is something real world as well, um, is I had my dentist. Um, one employee quit and filed a labor claim, breaks and lunches and overtime, and then got one of the other employees to quit and do that. Next thing you know, they're doing a what's called a full blown audit,
Mm.
and I'm like, what? And they go, well, we've had two identical claims within a 45-day period. And so we're going to go ahead and come in and audit all your records for the last
Boy,
5 years.
oh boy.
I'm like, so these are the things, and I can go over all of us as own businesses here. I can go over scenario after scenario after scenario. The bottom line is when you're small, like you and I know some person, not the same client we were talking about before, we know some person. I'm minding my own business, having dinner over here at the what's that thing? Aubrey's, Jay. Okay, over off of East Emory. 8:30 at night. Sends me a photo. Do I need an attorney? Like I'm looking at this and it's like, now keep in mind, and this is to all you business owners who think you're safe and secure because you're employing your best friend and your buddy. Okay. So my client employs his best friend buddy. The two went to junior high, high school together, played softball. Kids are playing football together. Everything was great until it wasn't great. Okay. Next thing you know, fires him. Next thing you know, this what was this like? It was a 16-page letter from this attorney firm in LA citing everything known to man. Okay. And I said, well, because now here's the deal. If you're in California, by the way, if this ever happens to you, you need to pick up the phone and call Jenny Nguyen-Jennings like ASAP. Do not respond, by the way, because there is a specific attorney firm in Southern California. They're ambulance chasers. And all they do, they advertise. Hey, you got a wage and hour claim? You think you have a wage and hour claim? Give us a call. You know, but they wrote this very excruciating, like scary. Like if I wasn't, if I was a young business owner like my client, I'd freak out.
Wow.
$198,000. And all looks legit. And I said, do not respond. Now, here's the one thing that we all need to be aware, because I think it's like this in every state, by the way. When an employee asks to see their employee file, okay, you have 30 days to give it to them, a copy of it. Okay.
Mhm.
If you don't, that's where they're going to snag you. And that's what this company did. Once this company found out that I think my client had their act together. Okay. Um, but once they, by the way, and this was that client that's like, nah, I don't want to pay Jenny to come in and do this. And it's
Oh,
like,
yes, I remember that one.
yeah, now you know who I'm
Tell
talking
them the
about.
story. Yes.
I don't want to pay. I don't want to. I told him ahead of time, like 2 months before this even happened. I'm like, you got problems. Okay, you have Jenny come in and fix the problem. You wouldn't talk to him. He's like, I don't want to pay that. I'll just take a risk. I'm like, okay, well, that risk has turned into a $198,000 scare letter. Now, keep in mind, it's just a scare letter. Okay. But he has no choice but to give them the employee file, which he doesn't have his act together on. We both know that. Okay. And now the attorney firm is going to look beyond that and go, is this company worth suing? Because that's all they're after is the money. Okay. And I said, don't answer, don't respond, don't do anything. And fortunately, I have him protected in a company, a corporate structure. I'm like, the worst case scenario here, dudes, are going to go after your S corp. They ain't going to come after you personally. And there's some other strategies, and I'm not going to go on record by saying here live, okay, that we can do where we won't even skip a beat, and they won't be able to access your personal assets. But I told him, I said, imagine 2 years from now with the plan that I've laid out for you, and you're going to be not 560,000 a year, but you're going to be close to 3 million a year as a contractor. Okay. They will come after your butt at that point. That's why if you are a business owner and your company is over $1 million a year in annual revenues, you now have a new problem because you are suable, and it's worth going after it because, and I'll tell you, I got a client of mine, Rui Garcia Zamora. Okay. We now have a contract with California where we can be in-house counsel. Okay. He's a client of mine. We're doing in-house counsel because guess what? The minimum retainer to just defend your butt is 10 grand. Okay. So you want to make sure that as you grow as a business owner, here, I'll close with this. Twice a year, you're giving Jenny's office a call. Hey, first of all, let me hire you to do a gap analysis so you can give me a baseline. Okay. Number two, let me hire you twice a year to do your maintenance program where you come in and verify I'm doing everything correctly. And then once you get big enough, you just want to hire her company just to be your HR company. Because to hire a full-time HR person, you're talking 85 loaded salary, about 115,000 a year. Okay. Just to
And
keep
that's
your
just a
butt in
generalist.
compliance. That's just a generalist, by the way. Yeah. So that's what I would recommend because we can go over, I mean, there's not enough podcast episodes to go through the scenarios.
Right.
Okay.
And we're just scratching the surface. This is just compliance.
I'm not talking about all the other stuff. Um, I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a good friend of mine. Remind me when we talk tomorrow, I got to introduce you to this guy. This is a guy you bring in and you go, hey, can you do me a favor and come into my client and give me a second opinion because he only represents employees. Okay. And
Yes,
he's
I
in
do
the top
remember.
10 most feared labor attorneys in California. He's a shark. But once you get him to come in, he's agreed to do it for me and my friends and clients and so forth. But once he comes in, they can't retain him because it would be a conflict of interest. But at least he'll tell you if he was going to come after your butt, this is the little loophole because you're not going to cover up all the loopholes. It's not possible.
Yeah,
Not in
agreed.
California, not most states. You're not going to cover up all the loopholes as a business owner. You might as well shut the business down. But more importantly, you need to have your corporate record book accurate and updated because that's also a part of HR compliance. You don't have your act together in a corporate entity structure, they're piercing that veil and they're coming after you personally. Okay. So, so I hope this has been a valuable episode. Any parting thoughts, Jenny, that you feel we didn't discuss today that a business owner really needs to understand?
Well, one of the things I do, the message I want to send out to business owners is that, employment law, wage and hour law, anything HR related, is constantly changing and it's not your responsibility, nor should you try to keep up to date with all the laws all the time. And we can Google all we want, but you're not meant to be a labor law attorney or an HR consultant. So one of the important things is to hire a professional, find out where you stand, so that way you can be prepared and we can help support you. As a business owner, you shouldn't have to know any and all the things. So hire the right professionals to help support you in your business.
Yeah, and kind of a round robin before we go. You want your operations dialed in, you give Chris Beasley a call. You want to see the doctor, come to me and I'll refer you to all these people. Jean Ortiz, you want some great graphic stuff. She's your jam. Jay Hornbuckle, just tell you, hey, all the stuff you got to look for, and he's got a jack of all trades. Michael Coelho will help you not overpay the government. Okay. And that's one of the benefits of being on the live call is you get some kudos there because Gene's going to take the video content, create and give you the raw content, and then create some promo videos for you as well. And then last but not least, Blue Dream HR. Okay. You want to get a hold of them, have them come out. I trust them. I would trust you with any business that I've ever gone after. Okay. So when you think of Blue Dream HR, think about all your family members, your friends, your relatives, the companies that you work for. Okay. The company now, if you happen to be an employee listening to this podcast and you work for a company, mention Blue Dream HR to the owner because you want to make sure that the company you work for is protected because if something happens, all of a sudden you're going to lose your job because they're going to take the company down because somebody complained about, I don't know, they didn't like a goldfish in the tank when they walked through the freaking door. People it's crazy the litigious state that California is. But contact Blue Dream HR and go out and make it happen. Share this podcast, like it on YouTube, and we'll see you here. Come here, bring all your questions as a business owner. We'll see you here every Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great, blessed week, guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much.